All right, folks, this is episode 6 of Unfiltered, our racing only fans podcast. Just myself and Blake today. We got Chris's input before we started. So today's topic we're going to at least start with is our review of last season, our favorite three and our most hated three races of last year. So since you wanted to bring up this topic, Blake, I'll let you start and see what was your, you want to start with negative races, like which one was our least enjoyable or which one was our most enjoyable
I
side.
figured we'd go back and forth.
Okay.
Start with three from both categories. Work our way down.
All right.
Before we start, I did get Chris' input on his top one and his most hated one.
Okay.
Um, his top one kind of blew me away a little bit because I thought he would agree with what my number one is, and he did not. So his number one favorite race was the Bristol Night Race,
Okay.
which I
Most-
thought,
I,
what? Really?
yeah, most people didn't
And,
like that. We were there.
and
I
he
enjoyed it.
said, well, I'm old school and I love an old fashioned ass whooping. And he said, it shouldn't be what everybody wants is a close race, close finish every time. Sometimes somebody's going to unload and just spank everybody. And he said, I loved it.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
that was his number one. And I was like, okay, all right, I can go with that. It's not on my three, but it is. I can see what he's saying, and I thought that was pretty cool. His most hated, I'm not putting exhibition races in my categories,
Okay.
but he hates the Clash. He
Yeah.
hated the Clash last year. He hates the fact that it is no longer poll winners, that you're mandated to go to the race and potentially not even be in it. But he
Yep.
doesn't look at that as racing. As when you have to plow through the field
Yeah.
to get anywhere, that's just not racing to him. So his number one race good was Bristol Night for an old school ass whooping, and his number one hated was the Clash, the Coliseum.
Okay. All right.
What's your thoughts on both?
Well, I mean, I agree. Well, so we were, full disclosure, you and I were there for the Bristol Night.
The ass whooping, yes.
Yeah, for the domination that was
Yeah,
on tap that day. We booked tickets. I don't remember how far out in advance, but I remember.
about 2 months.
Yep, I remember we were talking about it, like whether or not we would see what we saw with the spring race, which is on my top three list. But so is actually Bristol, two of it, both of them actually land on my list. And like an overall, like a top five most enjoyable races for the season for
Okay.
various reasons because of the, you know, and I agree with Chris. I like an old fashioned ass whooping. To me, that's closer to what you and I grew up watching, where one guy figures it out. But even though Larson dominated in extreme fashion, everybody behind him took turns catching up and finding the right sequence. They just hit on it better than everybody else. And what we watched, they were all over the track. There was tons of passing that night, but I don't know what TV showed because we were there in person. Uh,
Yeah.
but to me, that's real racing. At any time, there were a couple times where he could have been involved in somebody's incident because he was coming through the field and just the way the traffic played out and everything. They were dodging. Was it McLeod? No, the Arby's car. That's all I remember.
Yeah.
They were
I
dodging that
forgot
thing.
who it was too.
Uh, but there was plenty of opportunities for that to get away from him. But we don't really see like basically a wire to wire ass beaten, basically, like Chris said, from start to finish like that very much anymore. Um,
Yeah.
so and then his worst, I gotta agree, even though I don't think I would have I don't wouldn't have put the um exhibition races on there only because they are exhibition races. They don't have an outcome in the playoffs or in the championship, getting the road to the championship. I don't agree. I'm in agreement with Chris in that I don't agree in mandating somebody to come to something, spending money to come out to something that you're not guaranteed to race in, especially when you drag them all the way across the country. That's a massive expense for. the teams, to have the haulers, the cost of fuel, the hotel, only to not make the show and be sent back. It's ridiculous, in my opinion.
The thing about the fact that that race was created for pole winners, it was created
Yep.
to just test the TV. I mean, it was created. The original race was to test the coverage in '79, and what the first race had like 7, 8 cars.
Hmm.
And it was all pole winners, and the fact that where we've come with it, it's infuriating. We kind of touched on the All Star race as well, and I brought up to him, and he's like, "Man, I hadn't even thought of that." In the late '90s, if you won a race just like now, you were in. But also, if your team if like let's go with the 28 car in 1997, the 28 car with won with Ernie Irvan. They swapped drivers in '98 to Kenny Irwin Jr. Well, he was in the All Star race because the team
Hmm.
won a race. Well, this pet was it 2 years ago. Alex Bowman was out with a back injury. Did the team get to participate? No, that's
Nope.
wrong.
Agreed. I'm in agreement with you there, 100%. The team as a whole, it's a team sport at the end of the day. From the moment lap one waves through all the pit stops and cycles and whatever format we got to get to the end, if the team executes a win, the team should get to participate even if their driver's hurt. So I'm in agreement there 100% with you that when it comes to the All Star or the Clash, regardless of who's driving your car, if you as a team achieved that success point metric, whatever it is to qualify, you should still be allowed to participate.
Yeah.
I don't like. I'm in agreement also that I don't like what the All Star race or the Clash have devolved into, where it's basically a participation trophy event where everybody gets to come. It used to be about being elite. You had to win races, you had to win poles, or be a past winner or champion from that event before, and
Yeah.
now it's all right. The whole field gets to try out, and there's so many spots, and we're going to do heats and this and that, and I think it's taken away from it, and they've been doing it so long to where
Well,
it's not even relevant anymore. Like most people say it should go away, including the people that drive the cars think it should go away. In some,
even the Open used to be at Charlotte. It was a 50 lap race,
yeah,
one segment, and depending on the year, depends on how many cars were in the All Star race already. Depending on the year, the top three advance or the top two. Well, now you got like three advancing and a fan vote. Get rid of the fan vote. If you can't get in on your skill, you can't get in. Sorry.
yeah, okay. So for my number one, or
We're gonna
my
start
top
start at
three,
number three.
okay.
Start at three and work back.
Well, then I'm gonna say for me, the third best race of the year was when was it was it Vegas? No, it's not Vegas. Vegas is where Logano won.
Yeah.
Okay, Vegas where Logano won on fuel mileage because
Okay.
and my reason for that is as an old school fan, I can't remember the last time we saw a fuel mileage race win. But to me, as an old school fan, that and a technical person and enjoys all the stats and trying to work out the strategy, I feel like stage racing has taken away a lot of the strategy of top pick box. I think it's taken a lot of tools out of the driver's toolbox most of the time by dictating when the cautions are going to be, so when you're going to get a chance to fuel the car. And for whatever reason, it just worked out this way this time, where they were able to actually several of the folks, let's see how far we can stretch it. And, if you miss, then you miss your chance at the playoffs, advancing on, and, you don't qualify and you don't keep going. But the effort that they put in, similar to how Brad Keselowski did it at Kentucky and other places, I think that is an amazing skill. Obviously, not everybody can do it, or everybody else would be trying it, and more people would have success with it. I mean, think about how many times Jimmy Johnson lost a fuel mileage race at Michigan trying to win it that
Oh
way.
man. Yeah.
He'd be coming down and
You were
for whatever
three
reason, that
times.
guy can go, he could be on a rail back then, but he could not win that track to save his life when it came down to fuel mileage. And Michigan was always a fuel mileage race.
Yep.
But, compare that to Dale Jr., who won two of them there like that. With outstanding cars. It wasn't just that they had good fuel mileage, they had two cars.
That's one of my issues with the stages they have for the Coke 600 now.
Yep.
You have four 100 lap stages. Stop it. If you're going to have stage breaks, just do one lap 100, one lap 200, and let the last 200 laps be what it is. It is a marathon.
Mhm.
Stop breaking it up into four 100 lap races, and let it be what it was meant to be, a marathon.
Yeah,
200,
it was
200
supposed to
laps
be
is
the
about a
ultimate
mile and a
test
half.
of man and machine that season. Like
Yeah,
that extra 100 miles was more than any other race. Let's see whose components hold up. Because even though all these things are still spec, we've seen steering racks fail. We've seen
mhm,
plenty of times where different rods and toe links break just over the course of the race, not just from accidents, but from just pressure. Uh,
yep,
you know, different components fail. So,
yep,
in their effort to inject excitement, they've taken away a lot of the strategy. And so,
yep,
got to see that this past year. That was definitely one of my highlights because, and we were one of the few that I thought enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because again, you got to see a team that wasn't the best all day, but executed the race the best all day, win it.
yeah,
And Bell was on his way; he was coming, but just didn't get through traffic fast enough. But I mean, it made for a compelling story to watch too. Is
yeah.
he run out of fuel, or is Bell going to get there with faster tires, or is lap traffic going to hold him up, or at what point does he have to go and consume his fuel? So for me, Vegas toward the fall was one of my top races for sure.
Okay. My number three race favorite was probably gonna kind of blow your mind a little bit, but it's actually Fall Richmond.
With the option,
Uh,
okay.
yep, because of the option tire, because it did, in my opinion, what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to change what the field knew. The three team hit it. They hit the absolute perfect way of doing their scheme of how they're going to attack the race.
Yep, when to use the
And
tires and
Ryan Preece and Ricky Stenhouse couldn't just hold their line for two more laps to make that a perfect race for Austin. And then Austin, inevitably, I don't like the last lap. Obviously, is that's rough. But the race itself, the fact that what was that? Daniel Suarez started 12th on a restart and was leading within what 10 laps,
mm-hmm.
and it was because he decided to use that prime tire. The prime was the faster tire, right? The
Yeah,
softer tire.
yeah.
So he used the prime tire, and he got up to the lead and just said, "See ya, deuces," and he stayed up front the rest of the race. And Austin did the same thing later on, and you know he ended up winning the race, but he shouldn't have due to the lead that Joey had going into it. But the race itself, the wondering what people were going to do. The only thing that would have made that race better is if they would have had one extra set of primes
Mm-hmm.
so that you could really, you know, two sets was not enough because that puts everybody but a couple people that wanted to try something on the same damn strategy.
Yeah, I think if I agree with you, if you had more sets of those tires, you get more strategy combinations throughout the field. Your normal back marker teams versus your mid pack versus your people who've already won for the year, people who absolutely need to win to and might have a car capable to get in the playoffs. It definitely would shake some things up. So I agree with that. What I liked about that race more than anything was not just that for that particular part comers and goers, but that showed NASCAR that, all right, here's a lever you can actually pull that makes
Mm-hmm.
a difference because they've taken parts off the cars, they've tried all kinds of different stuff, but horsepower, because they're just stubborn
We
at
can't
this
we
point.
can't do that. That's
They
no.
just refuse at this point, even though engine makers have said it could be done, relatively easily and cheaply. Go up 100 to 200 horsepower, and it would help at least a lot of short tracks, most people believe, because it would give you more power and torque at the wheels to spin. But it showed us a tire that, while it didn't work out at Bristol, it worked out great at Martinsville in the fall. And I think it would have been great at Phoenix, even though Phoenix still raced really well. I think if you had brought that softer tire to Phoenix, man, what a race that could have been even more. And I
Yeah.
think they're going to run it. They're heading even further that direction. It sounds like based off the end of year discussions last year, they think they can go softer. So if that's the case and they do, then, we should get even better racing. They're finally beginning to swing back towards where your short track racing might actually be your best racing you see all year.
Hopefully it gets there. Definitely need it. So, third worst race of the year. I am going to blow your mind again.
Okay.
I was at this race, the Bristol Spring Race, for me. Now I know a lot of people are not going to agree with this, but I was at the race, and I sat there most of the race going, "What are we doing?" Because this set the tone for most of the race, the short tracks, the rest of the year, mainly Bristol in the fall, for people thinking, "Oh, I want that, I want that." I love tire wear. I love tire wear. I don't like the type of tire wear we saw at Bristol, where you had a tire and then it's gone. It's I couldn't stand it. It was like your driver's running top five, but he's running 3 seconds slower than normal to try to save. Though I mean, we're used to, back in the early 2000s, late 90s, we were used to people saving tire to, saving. We're talking about a half a tenth or a half second, possibly a lap to save tire. They were 2 seconds off the pace at a lap, 16 second a lap track. Like they're running Talladega formation laps at Bristol.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there going, okay, it looks cool, but I knew what they were doing because I'm sitting here. I've got Larson in my ear, and his spotter said, I think it was him and Hamlin, or him and Hamlin or him and Ty, I can't remember. They said we're just gonna block the field and we're just gonna run our times to try to save tire. That's not what I went to Bristol for. So that's why it's my number three worst because it did end up good for my driver that day. I think he finished fifth, the last car on the lead lap, and that was neat, that part of it. But and I'll be honest, the last pit stop sequence was crazy because they would not throw the caution flag no matter how slow Carson Hocevar went. But the fact that that happened and you had tire and then nope, it's gone. Like that just reminded me. Honestly, it reminded me of Brickyard '08.
Okay.
So
Let's see. What would be my worst?
the third worst.
Well, third worst.
Picking on you here.
I think I'll go with Talladega. Was it Talladega in the fall? We had 28 cars wrecked.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely in my top three. I feel like there's probably two others that are worse than that, but that to me just further exemplified why drafting track has no business in the playoffs
Mhm.
because you literally have so much out of your control. And then because they refuse to address the aero package at the drafting tracks and so forth, like we just look so stupid for going on TV and saying, the world's best drivers, and then we wad up 28 cars and it forces you into a position where you have to change your rules on the fly. Where just the previous week you DQ'd blind Ryan Blaney because he couldn't steer back to the pit box, but his tires were up. Or no, Barry had his issue. Blaney had his issue. Like they had no damage to their cars physically, but they took them both out. And you're like, so why did
Yeah,
we
the
all that
car the
hassle?
car was in one piece. There wasn't a scratch on it.
But
The
then we
tires
go the
were up,
next
but the
week
steering
and
rack was broken.
destroy a bunch of cars, and we're like, it's cool. Go fix them.
Yeah,
So that one was infuriating to me,
yeah.
and definitely an awful race. Like I already don't enjoy drafting racing as it is now. I can go back and like Thanksgiving, I was watching the it wasn't the Daytona 500, or maybe it was. Uh, but either way, on the older, rounder body cars from the 90s and early 2000s, and they're up off the track and they're spread out and they're
They're this
getting
far off
runs
the
on
track.
each other. They when they come out of the corner, they're 2 to 3 inches off the ground. And then when they go down in the corner, the valence starts to scrape a little bit, nailing that ride height just right. But because of it, they're able to suck up on each other, pass, and like who's getting runs on who and who's going to time it right. And then um, I watched Kurt Busch push Gordon to the win on to his third Daytona 500 win for that one. Uh, you know, and then I go and I watch any of these three or six, and they're just not the same. They're not gonna say they don't require skill or talent, but it's definitely not the same kind of drama or show. They're
Yeah,
definitely
well,
appointments. And again,
was it
because
the
the
end of
biggest thing
stage
is,
two?
go ahead.
Sorry, was it the end of stage two? They were 3 by 3,
Yep.
6 or 7 rows back, and they're talking about how great it looks, and I'm going, they're going 10 mile an hour slower than they used to.
Hmm. And they can't
Horse,
pass each other because they can't get runs on each other independently enough, and they're not spaced out enough to where they can get around each other.
yeah, I was
Until you can get
watching
enough of them
throttle
wrecked.
trace, and it's like everybody's topped out and doing 190. Ooh,
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yeah, I, yeah, that was definitely probably my third worst.
so my second favorite race was Homestead.
Yep. Okay.
There's just no there's only one track that races as good or better
Yep.
on the schedule, and the fact that NASCAR hasn't looked at this and goes, okay, what does this track have? What does the other track have? They're both got integrated banking. That's they got this on the bottom, this in the middle, this at the top, and it goes up gradually. And every track that we have that at runs amazing. Bristol had it. We had a great race, but people complained there wasn't enough wrecks. So they grinded it, and now we have what we have. If fans would just shut their mouth, sometimes
Mm.
we wouldn't get screwed up tracks like Bristol is now. I enjoyed Bristol when it had the 3 different lanes. You had racing all over the place, and now we're stuck to what we have. But Homestead, you had that last lap pass. You had everything that race. You had Larson blowing a tire, running second, coming all the way back through the field, and potentially having a chance to win. And you know, on money does it again,
Mm.
and you know, spins out late. And if it wasn't for that spin, he's in the final four. So you know, it's the whole race. That race had so much. The competition was amazing. And the last lap, I'm pretty sure Tyler Reddick started the last lap in third and won the race. So, it, I mean,
Yeah.
that's all anybody could ever ask for is a race like that. That it's not a green white. It was a late race caution, but I don't believe it was a green white checker. And, I mean, they had
No, it
five or
wasn't. It
six.
was a late race caution, but you're right. It was not a green white checker. I think they had more than 3 laps to go. But I mean, when they restarted, it wasn't like a all right 2 lap shootout. It was 3 or 4, and
It had time. It had time to develop, and
yeah.
that's just what Homestead does. It develops always, and you've always got somebody wondering what, like Ryan Blaney thought, I'm going to use this lane because I think he's going to go there, and he gives the second best wall rider in the series the
And just
wall,
blows by him like a
and
rocket.
just
Yeah.
deuces. So that's my number two. I
My
have a
number
feeling that's
two.
probably yours.
It was close to being my number two, but actually I felt like Homestead start to finish was my number one. My number two was Indianapolis. And
Really,
yep.
that
Uh,
was that was my four.
I enjoyed Indy from start to finish because we haven't been there in a few years. There are several factors to it that made me enjoy it. Larson getting redemption for not getting to even attempt the Coke 600 because of the rain. So he comes back to the place where to Indy after all the the build up that happened around the Memorial Day weekend events and checks off this major milestone in his career. The team executes near flawless. Like that place has always demanded that the best team, the best driver, like excellence across the board. You don't really have any lucky winners. And even when, like Paul Menard and them, they executed the best that day. I mean, Gordon was coming, but I mean, you don't luck into a win there. So I thought that race was great from start to finish. And again, it's another one of those people didn't like it because Larson won, and they all say that Indy's a boring track, but I mean that whole weekend was good. I mean the Xfinity race was phenomenal.
Well, Larson made it exciting with his. I mean, nobody was
Yep.
doing the late passes like he was, and he was.
Yep. Yep.
The common theme was they thought that possibly IndyCar helped him
Yeah, the way he
set
used
those
what he
up.
knew how to do in a stock car helped him at Indy, and then what he learned about the track while in an Indy car helped him make the passes, and the way he made the passes through the corners and down the straightaways. you know, I have a hard time believing he ain't gonna go back to back. If everybody else in the field ain't watching film of what he did last year, they're just gonna watch themselves lose to him
Well,
this year for
what
sure.
what I think will happen is we'll have three more cautions this coming year because people are going to try that,
And not be able
and
to pull it off.
yeah, that or the outside person going to go f you and hold their line, and then you got two wrecked race cars, maybe more.
True. Okay, yeah.
So, what's your second most disliked?
It's got to be Coda. I mean, Byron won HMS car, yeah, great, but I don't like that track. It doesn't produce good racing. It's too wide for cup cars, and so the racing is dull. And other than when they had some rain to get them bunched up in that first year, people didn't really know what they were doing there. It's really not produced anything worthwhile since then for me, anyway.
Yeah,
It's just not you know, it's not even worth. Road racing. Usually, you could turn it on and get some excitement out of it. I mean, the Glen was phenomenal. Sonoma had its benefits this year. Chicago Street Race had its pluses and minuses. Coda, when you have to start creating artificial track limits because the cars aren't designed for that track, I don't get much out of it.
yeah. I know me and you slightly disagree on this, but if they would just leave the turtles in, leave
Yeah.
the rumble strips in, that makes the driver self police because
Oh, I
your
agree.
car flying your car flying through the air does not give you speed.
Yep. I'm all for them leaving them in there. I understand why they took them out from a safety aspect. I'm for leaving them in there. I mean, look, if you want to take the risk and you want to run over it and learn to fly, well, you're gonna find
Yeah,
out how well your team built that roll cage.
but road courses are made to be technical,
Yep.
and if you take those out, then what are we doing? Like,
Yep.
it just doesn't make sense. And I had it pulled up. I had the same thing. That's my number two. Same track, same reasons.
Yep.
Just couldn't get behind it. Just
Yep.
I thought about it. I almost didn't put it in top three, and because Christopher Bell was running him down. What if what if Ty Gibbs lets him go earlier
Hmm.
instead of trying? Held Ty Gibbs held him up for what, 5 laps probably,
Yep.
maybe more. So like, what if Ty doesn't? Maybe then it's a better ending, but the race itself, it's is
Yep. And I'll
lackluster.
say that like I didn't take the ending into consideration as like the sole decider. I know a lot of people do that on Jeff Gluck's
Yeah,
poll of like, oh, if Chase Elliott wins, it's a good race, regardless of whether it was actually good racing throughout.
yep,
Like, oh, Chase Elliott won, it's a good race, or
yep.
Jimmy Hamlin won, so it's a bad race automatically, or whatever. Like, I do take into consideration the product throughout the day. If I'm gonna sit there and watch it, I'm looking at all components of it. Did we have good strategy? Did the tires wear? Was it like we had? I need to go back and look at the stat. I do think we still ended or tied the. No, we surpassed it. The number of races in a season with a green white checker, which to me is artificial outcome. because we're constantly with unlimited attempts, we're constantly manipulating the outcome of the race by doing that. And more often than not, the car that was the most dominant all day doesn't win. So a lot of the times you can go down the list of winners from last year, and if they had a green white checkered in them, were they really the best car that day, or did they kind of luck into it? Um, you know. So my number one best was Miami. I
Okay.
thought
Yep.
it was the so much passing, such great racing all day, phenomenal finish. It just reminded you of what is possible at Miami with the right tire and the right weather conditions, and with this car, especially the way it excels on mile and a halfs. There wasn't anything bad about that race, other than one bad decision by Ryan Blaney that let Reddick come by him. But then, I mean, then he came on, with a man with an iron will, like just like he did last year at Martinsville, and the year before that, to win it back to back in the fall.
Yeah.
So that
Well,
was my number one, and it was tough because there were some really good races. My honorable mentions are for that almost made my top three were the two Darlington races. I mean, the Briscoe win in the fall, a team that's going out of business. Darlington always produces great racing. Seeing him man up, run him down, win it out, straight up, like put on a hell of a performance. And then the same thing for Brad Keselowski, finally getting a win, and he was invested in this team. His teammates won a bunch. They've won duels, but this is the first time he's won a points race in his own car that he owns, and an investment in a team. Uh, and Brad's one of those Hall of Fame drivers. So
yep.
uh, it was hard not to put either Darlington race in there because those are usually two of my favorites. They're always must watch, kind of like Bristol usually is, because that tires are going to play a factor, that you're racing the track. No matter how good everybody else is, at the end of the day, you still have to race this track. If you don't respect the track will make you pay for it.
Both Darlingtons were my honorable mention, as well as Brickyard. My number one, which I am shocked it's not in your top three or your honorable mentions, is Kansas won the entire race from start to finish.
Yeah.
Was insane. I mean, the first stage you had Larson and Chastain just back and forth, just
Yeah. You know what?
just
I forgot about that one, honestly. But yeah, it was a fantastic race. Honestly, I forgot
yeah,
about it.
yep. The whole race was phenomenal. Yeah, it had a green white checkered, and yeah, Larson won by
Yeah.
where's it that much,
Don't you
but
have the painting in your background on the on the
yeah,
ceiling, I think?
it's up a little bit
Yeah,
up.
that's what I thought.
There we
Yeah.
go.
Okay. So yeah, by a nose.
So by something hair, we can't say that on YouTube,
Yep. Yep.
and I mean the finish. I mean, I'm a Larson fan, so the finish had me just, the roller coaster of that finish alone was insane. I'm going, ah, man, I was, we didn't get it. And then you hear Cliff go, then you hear, not Cliff, but the spotter go, we won, we effing won. It, it made the whole race. I mean, the
Yeah.
whole race was just that exciting. And it wasn't just for the lead, just every position was being fought for the entire race. And Fox did a tremendous job on that race to show what was going on.
Well, I think we've seen that with Kansas too, just in the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, really. Uh, just the way the track has aged and the way the racing is, that
It's
it's
got
starting
the
to come
variable
into
break. It's got
yeah,
the variable braking.
and it's got the progressive banking, much like Homestead. So it's very much beginning to put on the same kind of racing like Homestead, where you get this fantastic racing, and so I mean that's why it's deserving of being in the playoffs. The people that win there again excel. So
So my number one race that I did not like was Dover.
I don't remember much about Dover. I gotta be honest.
Oh, Dover, Denny Hamlin won. Larson chased him down, and this is I'm making this my number one because of the aero blocking nature of this car due to the lack of horsepower.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Larson had a car, he chased him, I think he was like 3 seconds back, chased him down. The moment he got in that wake, stuck,
Hmm.
just stuck. And it's not just because it's Larson. I'd pick this even if it wasn't Larson. You, certain tracks, that aero blocking is just insane. If you just had a little more horsepower, it would make that not a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Because again, well, I think Dover more specifically than others for aero blocking. Dover is just a big version of Bristol. And it's one of those, if you can put enough power down to where they're swirly coming up out of the corner, and you used to see that all the time. You come up out of the corner at Dover, and you basically could read the passenger side number and sponsor. It was almost so straight sometimes on some of these cars, and that's not the case anymore, for the most part, unless they're just way off on setup because they're not putting down enough horsepower. The tires aren't, the right overall match to the rims and sizing and everything. You still get it with the Xfinity cars, but you just don't get that with the Cup cars. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean Dover used to be one of my favorite tracks to go to when the schedule went there because again you'd see guys just basically dive bombing each other, sliding up, drifting up the track, and drifting it sideways out of the corner. I remember in the early years of the chase when it was the Roush trio, Biffle, was it Martin, Biffle, and Kenseth and Edwards. They were all trading spots back and forth, like the three of them coming up out of the corner together, like spread out like this, like fighter pilots, like, and they're trading positions going around there, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
The wing actually helped them with that because it would like straighten the cars back out for them when they would get so out of control coming up out of it. So it's sad to see where Dover's fallen.
My dishonorable mention is the Daytona 500.
Okay,
Um, Anybody that knows me knows I can't stand uh,
Byron.
drafting tracks now.
Yeah,
Well, Byron has nothing to do with it on
yeah.
this situation. It's
Okay.
uh, the 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 race itself. There's not handling doesn't matter, not one bit, like we talked about with earlier. But the end of the race, a wreck happens. They've crossed the line, and Fox in NASCAR apparently too keeps showing that Byron crossed the line first. The line does not matter one bit of nothing on the last lap.
Nope.
It's the time, the moment of caution. And everything that I watched showed that Bowman, not Byron,
Hmm.
was leading at the time of caution. And I mean, they showed it at nauseum. Byron beating the line. The line does not matter on the last lap.
Yeah.
Scoring loops do not matter on the last lap. The only thing that matters on the last lap is the moment the caution comes out, this car's leading or wherever position you're in. It's where your car is on the track when the yellow flies. And they kept showing the line, and it's still obviously it's infuriating me right now just to think about you took the Daytona 500 away from Bowman because you kept looking at the line. The line
Hmm.
means nothing.
No, I could see the frustration there. For me, the probably the most disappointing race of the season was the final Daytona race, the fall one, because that previously has been our lead off into the playoffs, and it's billed as that anything can happen. Uh, anybody could get in still, which usually creates more chaos. But you didn't necessarily see that chaos, but the racing just wasn't good. Like it just was not good that day. Um, from my standpoint, I mean, the drafting rate, it just felt subpar even to like the normal. They just were not able to pass in a way that they had been before. Um,
Yeah, and poor Parker Resloff got chewed
yeah,
up, spit out by everybody for a Chevy pushing a Ford. Who
yep,
cares? He's
yep,
sitting here
yep,
pushing the car in front, the car that's sitting in front of him. You
yep.
know, like he's trying to make a name for himself.
And that's another component of it that puts that race in a bad
All
that
the all
those
the
races. all
drafting
those races,
track. Yeah.
honestly, and a bad taste in my mouth with them is the level of which of interference the manufacturers have had to this point. And I mean, they all but they didn't do anything about it at Daytona, but they NASCAR sure sent a message after Martinsville and the stuff they did to manipulate the outcome to get Byron into the playoffs. Still should have been there. We had that conversation. The way the Chevys essentially lined up and blocked and such overt race manipulation. But I mean, I watched the during Thanksgiving. I watched one of the Fox replays, waiting for a football game where they were showing. I think it's the '95 Daytona 500 or the third. Must have been thinking about the wrong one. But the way they could pass, they had control of their destiny. And now you don't have control of your destiny.
Yep.
You're dependent on somebody else. You're also dependent on it has to be a teammate or same manufacturer. Just so many things that are outside of your control. To me, it's not racing. You've taken these tracks, four of them more than the other two necessarily because I think Atlanta's continuing to spread out. We've talked about that, but you've turned them more or less into Formula One. And I'm a NASCAR fan. I'm not a Formula One fan. Nothing wrong with it, but like I want to see real racing, and that's not real racing. So
Yeah, it's kind of
hoping,
like what TJ Majors has brought up ad nauseum on door bumper clear about Kyle Larson's crew telling him off, off, off at the end of the Talladega Fall race.
yeah,
He's pushing Brad, but the moment they got off of the trioval,
yeah, basically lift.
you hear the spotter go off, 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 telling him to back off so that they didn't push a Ford to the win. And that's, I mean,
Yep,
you're trying to get every position you can.
yep. Every
What does it
point
matter if
matters,
a Ford's sitting in front
and
of you?
yeah, yep, just across the board bad. So, oh, hold on, I got a dog to let in. I'm coming, Joel. So, all right.
So Helio Castroneves is going to attempt the Daytona 500.
Yeah, that'll be. I was trying to think. I'm like, hadn't he done this before? But no, that's been Sam
Project
Hornish.
91.
Yep, that's been Hornish and Franchitti that have other drivers
Now,
from
Hornets was in
IRL.
the series for what, 5 years
Yep.
at least?
But
So,
in my head, I'm like, okay, so other IndyCar drivers, you got Hornish, Franchitti, Juan Pablo. Juan Pablo is the only one to have any measure of success.
Tony
Uh,
Stewart.
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, he was only a champion,
uh, yep,
but yeah, I think that'll be interesting. I mean, he's going to be in per- perceptively a good car. Uh,
yep.
he's going to be in a track house car, and you know,
He does have 4 or 5 drafting track starts, but they're in IROC cars,
yeah.
Daytona and Talladega. So
Honestly, he
he
might
did,
actually be well positioned considering, and Frankie's been doing, he's done other stuff. He's been doing sports car stuff here and there and other things. So we'll see how that works out. And he's got tons of Indy wins, and Indy's a drafting track for them when it comes to the
yeah,
Indy car airplane cars. So, uh, he might do better than most people expect.
yeah. So that's that was interesting to hear yesterday morning. I was like, okay, that might be good. You wanted to bring up your thoughts on the change at DBC door
Yeah.
bumper clear.
So I mean, obviously we've started our own podcast, show, discussion, whatever. But for years, you and I have talked now about the different content we each consume each week and just share, opinions on what we've heard or from the various shows, whether it was, DBC and Stack and Pennies or Money Lap or Dale Jr. Download, whatever the case may be. And so this year they're changing up their lineup. And Freddie's tweet said that he had the choice, which I thought was interesting that he had the choice. Freddie is the last member to join the show, and the choice was given to Freddie to either restructure it or let it die. Why was it
Well,
not?
I think it was given to him because
Yeah.
Um, Brett's gone.
Yep.
He said he was gone. TJ obviously has a spot on the Dale Jr. download, so I guess that's why it was given to him.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, at the end of last year, we saw TJ move over to DJD, which I thought when Mike left and Dale started doing his own thing, it was kind of to give Dale room to kind of go all over. So I think it's interesting they're bringing TJ over there. But I mean, them together make a good fit. I mean, they spent a lot of time in their career wise together, so he's able to speak to, just like Mike was, that dynamic of being inside of Dale's universe, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I said on Twitter, or X, whatever the hell you want to call it, when to Freddie's tweet, like, something you and I have talked about it at, I don't know, at length throughout the last year and probably the two leading up to it, just how, the show has slowly become listen each week because of what they're going to say. They're going to talk about inside moves, decisions in the garage, what's going on, everything to it's slowly devolved into basically what we drank at the bar last night, people not showing up, lots of side threads. You're not getting the content that made you want to come listen to it in the first place. Now it's just a bunch of messing around, which is fine. But the reason why they had the listeners they had was because of you got nuggets from them that you couldn't get anywhere else.
Yep.
And
Rumors were spread, and
so now a lot of uh information actually, you get more information from Actions Detrimental or from the Money Lap with Parker and Landon, or some of the stuff on Stack of Pennies. Um, you just there's just so much that or Harvick's, happy hour. There's a lot more content now to consume,
yep.
and I think they took their eye off the ball, and so I think this was Dirty Mo's attempt to basically take that massive audience that show has garnered, uh, and hopefully not lose it. Because I mean, you're talking like they've got all these sponsors for these podcasts within Dirty Mo because
Yep.
of the listenership. And DBC was their number one property for a long, long time. It had so many viewers, and they would give jabs to Junior, like, "Oh, you wish you could get these numbers," "Oh, you had to borrow one of our guys to get the kind of numbers,"
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. So that was always entertaining. But if that's going to be your cornerstone property, then you need to treat it like that. And the people they had were not treating it that way. You know, and then once not Freddie, but once Brett stopped spotting, not that all his years of experience weren't relevant, but when you're not in the garage week to week and you're not in the rumor mill and you're not in the events, you don't always have a lot to contribute. And so
Yeah.
he wasn't really contributing all that much. And then Freddie was
He
drunk.
only contributed what 5 times when he actually spotted.
Yep. Otherwise, and then TJ was very guarded with a lot of his responses this year, so maybe he saw what was coming, or I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think it's very interesting the shakeup they've got. Now I like Carson. I like Carson more than I like Casey. You know, uh,
Yeah. She's
Carson
She
races.
seems like she's got really good. She pays attention, and she's got a lot of good just things to say from things I remember.
Yep. So I liked when Carson filled in for Casey while Casey was out for her second for their second child being pregnant. So I'm glad that they brought Carson in. Um, I would really love if they gave us, obviously they're not going to air their dirty laundry, but I would love to know why all the different changes were made. Brett, for example, on X has gotten very political. He's very outspoken. I'm sure that probably doesn't work too well with a lot of the brands that are inside of the, Dirty Mo conglomerate of sponsors. So that probably isn't good, but that's just a guess. Can work against you. But
So,
what do you think?
well, my thing is I don't understand how you can still call it door bumper clear. It's not a spotter podcast anymore. You got a spotter, you got a driver, and you got a past owner slash crew chief.
Yeah.
Like you're keeping the fans of Door Bumper Clear, the people that subscribe to the podcast and have it automatically downloaded, which I believe is what you do, correct?
Yeah.
And they're getting your stuff when really the show should be changed. The name should be changed because it's not that's not Door Bumper Clear. No matter what you say, you have the last, like you said, the last spotter that was brought in
Yeah.
is the the holder of the key now, and he's the only spotter on the show. How can you call it Door Bumper Clear?
And he was definitely one of the least known spotters in the garage.
Yeah,
TJ is infamous.
yeah.
Some of some of the spotters throughout that are up on the tower are infamous for who they were partnered with, and now like Eddie DeHaan and those kind of guys. Now, yeah, I'm just very interested to kind of see where we go from here.
Yeah.
But I mean, the show lost a lot of its, it started to build this wave, and then I don't know what happened exactly, but it started to go up, and then it just like cratered all of a sudden. Because I
I,
remember when we were leaving South Carolina, when was when they started having like the different songs come in and stuff, and the listener call-ins, and those pretty much went away. They hired some of the guys that did them and put them on their other shows, so you actually lost content by doing that because you're not actually using them in any type of
yeah.
fashion of which they were contributing to the totality of the show anyway. Um, you know, you lost the Blake Shelton piece where he had it in like then they had that you had the rap guy that
And
called.
I love that
I
raps.
like that one. That one was awesome.
That song was awesome, and it epitomized what the show was. And then we stopped using it. We didn't even use either of them. It's like I know it's just an intro song, but it does. It kind of starts your show out for you. It's.
Yep.
I mean, I would every time they used the rap guy, I would smile just because I thought it was
Yep.
spot on.
Yep. It was
No,
it was a well done play on words, on the characters, the personalities, and they lost that, but they didn't even bother to replace it. Like I don't know, it just felt like the show lost a lot of its production value across the board.
yep.
Um, which for being again that top tier property was kind of shocking that they allowed that to happen to throughout. I kind of thought they would course correct before now. Honestly, I expected them to course correct last year
Yeah.
when it was getting so bad, and they waited till the end of the year. So,
Was there any other news that I'm not thinking of right now?
no, I don't think so. I mean, we're still waiting on. I mean, really, we've got all right. So it's the 7th. The Clash is in 23 days, something like that. So,
It's on the 4th of January
okay, so yeah, and they haven't done
or
anything
January,
for,
February. My bad.
and we haven't heard about what changes, if any, they're making to the season.
No.
Um, we've got a long way to go in the legal lawsuit landscape, but if NASCAR is going to do something about this injunction, you really don't have much time left because once they start racing as chartered teams, it's kind of hard to take it away from them.
Yeah.
Uh, one of the things on Moody's show today when I was driving back from getting the car after we got tires put on, they were talking. Somebody brought up, and it's a good point, but I don't think they thought about the logistics of it. As the sport allegedly is gaining more popularity and things are coming back, you have these 36 charters, and then you have the other 4 charters, and you have so many open spots, etc. Right now, I think there's 7 cars listed as open entries to the Daytona 500 right now to try and qualify. From
And
what
we don't know where Truex is going to be.
right, and we have, and his isn't on the list. Um, but so let's say that's 8. Well, that's 46 cars. No, 8. No, so that's 44 cars. The
Yeah.
old way we used to race 43. And the problem with that, whether it's 42, 48, or 43, all the tracks have downsized their pit stalls. They've all cut the pit stalls to match the field. So now the pit stalls are more spaced out at all these tracks. to give them more room. So I don't think it's very easy for the teams to go, yeah, you might, as NASCAR, say, okay, well, we're starting to see a growth in the sport. We're going to see the average field size go back to 40 to from, 38 and 40 cars to 43. It's not that simple to turn a switch like that at your 20 something tracks that play throughout the year. Your road courses, maybe, but the pit stalls lengths and the
I
road
don't think
lengths
the
are
Team
limited.
Alliance will let that happen. Let that happen.
Right. But I mean, NASCAR, well, the reason why I say this is because Moody said, well, NASCAR shrank it, NASCAR could expand it. And all I was thinking in my head was once you make these logistical changes to the physical property to limit the number of stalls and you take away and you shorten pit roads and you expand stall lengths, like repainting lines is one thing, but timing sensors have to be moved based off the number of stalls at the
Yeah,
tracks. Some of them, when they've repaved them, they only did the concrete or asphalt to certain lengths because there was only so many stalls. Like there's all kinds of stuff. It's not as easy to just say, okay, 43 cars showed up this week, so we got 43 pit stalls. They don't all necessarily fit anymore as they've revamped some of these tracks. So I think that is an interesting discussion. Like I think you're still stuck with probably 40 cars at max.
yeah, I agree.
You're starting to see more interest. I think if a new manufacturer wanted to come in, they would have to wait, if they were going to come in and get so many spots and we were going to grow back to like a 43 car field like traditionally, even though the track can accommodate 43 cars and we have enough spots, you have to give the tracks time during the off season or after their race to like redesign their pit road because those timelines have to be moved that are in the ground,
Yeah,
that are inside the concrete or the asphalt, that all this stuff has to be redone and repositioned and repainted and potentially extended the walls and just,
oh, it's fine. It don't matter.
yep, all that crap. But other than
So
that,
I did hear a little bit of Moody. I didn't really hear. I think the topic was uh, resolutions for some reason. But is Angie Skinner? Is she a permanent co-host, or was that like just
I
today?
think only on Tuesdays, from what I'm understanding, from what they were when they were
Okay,
signing off today. So she's a
I was
Tuesday thing because she's
I
always
was
had
like
her thing. Her and Mike have always had a show on there for I don't know how many years now.
Skinner Roundup.
Yep, and then they've got now she's got Motivate, which is her podcast, which I like. I don't know if you've listened to it yet. I've listened to it on a couple occasions. I think there's only 7 or 8 episodes so far, but kind of like Kelly Earnhardt doing the business of motorsports. Angie's Motivate. She's talking to a lot of the reporters within the industry and how they got their start and stuff. So
Okay,
it's another aspect of the sport we don't necessarily get to hear a lot about.
okay,
One of the things I thought was cool, at least for me, um, I was listening to the one with Kelly Crandall yesterday, and she was talking about access to on NASCAR media. There used to be, I don't know if you ever knew this or not, but on NASCAR's old website back in the day, there was a NASCAR media site specifically for media members.
okay.
I had an account on there for sim racing where I got the original images from all the NASCAR photographers that they took throughout a race weekend. You had the uncut, unedited, full like press pass stuff for the weekend. So it's like when Carl Edwards did his retirement announcement, I have the full uncut thing. Same thing with Jeff Gordon,
Oh
with Tony
wow,
Stewart, all those guys, because they were in that archive
that's interesting.
and they had their press releases and stuff. So there's a lot of neat information. So listening to how those members got their start and the information that they had in there was pretty neat. Uh, let's see here. I've got it somewhere on one of my drives still. I was looking to see. But as a sim racer, I used that site a lot. And listening to Kelly Crandall, she was saying how for her, that's how she got started in racing. Yep, I've got Jeff Gordon's final year interviews, Edwards' retirement press conference, Stewart and Junior's retirement press conference. I've got like the full unedited, uh, pure video for eternity. Um, and so that's pretty neat that you can have all of these. Talladega Media Center 2017, all the different ones for Richmond, just tons of stuff. But you got the full on
So
uncurated.
you're saying they don't do that anymore?
No, no, all the stuff they do, they don't have it in that. But what she was saying was how she, as a young journalist or a young aspiring media member, you could be working for a local town paper or whatever that covers the sport. You didn't, if you couldn't afford to get NASCAR credentials to get in the garage and stuff like this was a way to get started. And she used it as a way to get started, covering the sport. So I thought that was neat. I hadn't heard anybody really talk about that in a long time.
Yeah, it's I didn't know any of that.
Yeah, you would have to request it. Like I submitted all my design credentials back in the day to get in there. Me and some of my buddies, and it took a while. Like you had to be persistent because it's hard to get a hard card, and that was essentially giving you a hard card to the back end access, more or less, to get in there. Um, so because it also had the whole Rolodex of the entire sport. Like inside that media site, you had all the teams, the PR sponsors for the teams, the PR sponsors for the driver, like all the people contacts. You had the emails, the phone numbers. Like I basically had the Rolodex of the sport at one point in time. I could go in there at any time and get Rick Hendrick's email, get, you know, Kyle Busch's PR person's email, like stuff you would never have access to as a normal person.
Wow,
So, I mean, it was really
maybe
cool.
that's possibly why they stopped doing it.
I don't know, but maybe somebody abused it. Like I never thought about it, but
Yeah,
I just remember seeing it like, oh wow, you can get a lot of cool information in here, you know. So, but no, that's it. That's all I got.
yeah. I don't know of any other news off the top of my head.
I think it's
But
about to pick up though. I mean, we just finished the NFL regular season. A lot of this stuff is going to start coming out as we head up to the Super Bowl because that's going to align with the Clash and then the kickoff to Daytona. So I would say we're about to start getting a lot of information. We had some driver announcements come out earlier. The Zane Smith announcement. The only one we really don't know about, and it doesn't seem like it's going to get a ride, is Corey. So,
yep.
um,
Uh, it's not NASCAR related, but the Tulsa shootout was this past weekend,
I watched some of it.
and my goodness, the the race that Christopher Bell and Larson put on.
Uh huh.
Oh my!
Yep, that was phenomenal. That was.
Larson essentially did a Chastain for 2 laps
Yep.
around the wall there. Like it's insane what these dirt drivers can do. Just to try to win a small trophy on a
What
really
I am
short
in
track.
with that note and to that point, now that Joe Gibbs has lifted his ban on his guys running other stuff, I'm interested to see if Bell's performance picks up this year by letting him back
Oh,
at other disciplines. I would assume it will because he's going to get, just like it helps Larson and it's helped, it helped. I mean, look at the performance that Spinny Wreckhouse had. He won a race, but he won a race 2 years ago too. And since he's been back out there doing these other disciplines, his short track racing has gone up substantially.
yeah,
So I think you're going to see some return on that.
yeah, yep. Well, this was really fun.
Yep,
I really thought that we were going to have the same number one. Possibly would have if you
we
guys
we were
remember.
close. We were
Yeah,
close. We were close. We still had the same overall what races we thought were the best. If we had to pick 10 overall, we pretty much landed in the same spot. The order not necessarily, but
yeah,
for a lot of the same reasons.
yeah. I'd be interested. I know it'll never happen, but I would love to hear like what a Jim France, if he would be honest and go, "Hey, these are my three most. I didn't like these three races at all, and here's why."
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I think that'd be awesome if you could
I would
get the
love to
sport to
hear.
say which one they thought were their three worst products they put on track for the year, and
Yeah,
which one were their three best products that epitomized NASCAR. Like
yeah.
this, everything we want the sport to be, broadcast, on track activity,
Well, Chris said
aggression.
it last week. Chris said it last week. They said they wanted to bottle up Homestead and take it to Phoenix.
Well,
You
we ain't there.
what? Like, well, it's not there, and you guys are the ones that decide the schedule.
Yeah.
So,
And you're trying to make it for TV. So if you care about just the TV, then why are we not at Homestead?
yep,
You know?
that's a very good point.
So um, yeah, we'll see. All right. Well, I'll talk to
So,
you later, buddy.
yes, sir.
All right. Until next time.